Hello, my name is Dwight Hobbs. I'm the current president of the board of directors of the Fuel User Group. Today, I'm also joined here by John Matelski. He's the immediate past president of Fuel.
Hey, Dwight, it's great to be with you today.
Great. Great to be with you here too. John and I have known each other for about 4.5 years, serving on the board of directors together. And today, we're excited to talk a little bit about our experiences with Fuel, what's on the horizon for the community, and what we're seeing in our day-to-day work as well. A little bit about myself. My day job is as a security engineer in the healthcare industry. I work for the University of Pennsylvania Health System in southeastern Pennsylvania. John, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, thanks again, Dwight. I'm honored to work in the public sector. I serve the people of DeKalb County, Georgia, as their Chief Innovation and Information Officer. I've been on the board of Fuel now actually since its inception for 4 years, and am honored to serve in that capacity as well.
That's great. When did you first? So you joined Fuel at the very beginning. Was it right away? Were you one of the first board members then?
Yeah, so the Fuel organization started up just over 4 years ago, and actually I've been a Palo Alto Networks customer now for over 10 years, and I've been with DeKalb County for 7. So I was really excited when about 5 years ago I learned that Palo Alto Networks was considering starting up their own user group, and then they wanted it to be independent and those kinds of things. And so really when that occurred and I got a call asking whether or not I'd be willing to participate and kind of help form the group. And I said, sure. I mean, that level of engagement was something that I've had the opportunity to do in other with other technology solutions. And starting something from the ground up, I thought would be just really, really exciting, especially within the IT security ecosystem, because there's a lot of different groups out there you can get engaged with, but really none of them, in my mind, are focused on like the entire ecosystem. There's different groups for each different solution, but really the goal here, as we're looking at Fuel, was trying to develop a user group that could be more than just that one customer base for one particular vendor. So again, I was happy to join the board and be one of the founding members of that board about 4 years ago. And it really, what the reason I wanted to join and help create it was, again, getting a organization within the IT security ecosystem that could be vibrant, that could really help facilitate the different discussions that we need to happen in the community. And probably most importantly, making sure that within the vendor community that we've got alignment and have a voice into both Palo Alto Networks as well as the rest of the Fuel IT security vendor ecosystem.
Yeah, that's great. It's great that you've been here kind of since the very beginning too. And I know that the Fuel is a fairly young group, especially in comparison to other user groups. But yeah, I really appreciate all those things as well. That's what I really enjoy about Fuel is that it's a kind of an independent group. It's very aligned with Palo Alto Networks, but it's kind of its own entity. It's on its own, and it's free to have its own opinions, as are all the users. It's one of the parts that I think is one of my favorite things about Fuel, really.
Yeah, and I mean to that point, I mean I know you're like we are. I mean we don't just have Palo Alto Networks in our ecosystem. I mean I've got Cisco, Avaya, Juniper, Splunk. I mean, you start naming the vendors. Yeah, I probably, if I added up all of my IT security vendors, I'd probably be, a couple dozen or so. So, getting into a user group that had a broader focus than just, my firewalls and my firewall vendor, that's really what was appealing as we tried to create this group.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're completely right there as well. So yeah, I joined Fuel. I think it would have been a little bit after you. I think in the second round of kind of board members coming on. So I've been
Right, right.
here for about 4 years. But yeah, I joined in. I gave a presentation at Palo Alto's Ignite conference. I guess it would have been 4 years ago when it was in Las Vegas, and I was presenting on some work that I had done with the Palo Altos. And this was Fuel probably would have been about maybe 6 months old at this point. So I hadn't even heard of Fuel. I didn't even realize that Palo Alto was standing up their own user group. And the Palo Alto Networks person that I was working with to give the presentation, told me about it after giving the presentation. He said, "Oh yeah, that was great. You might be interested in this user group. They're looking for additional members on the board. They really want are looking to grow." And I said, "Oh, maybe. Not really sure about that. I don't really know if I want to jump into a volunteer leadership position in such a young organization." But I looked into it. I joined Fuel and started looking around on the forums and really liked what I saw. It seemed like for such a young community, it was a really vibrant and growing community. It's obviously at that point very young, still trying to get footing, but it already had the idea of chapter meetings, which are local. Those are great, and these larger Spark events that they were putting on. I thought for a young organization to be so put together and have all these great things already, why not? So I put my name in and got on the board at that point. But that was really, it was those things that kind of drew me to Fuel, just that they were, young and fresh. They had these ideas that they were putting out there and they were already growing so fast. So initially my thought was, oh, if I join this board, it's going to be small. They're going to be looking to me to kind of build out everything. But even as a young group, it seemed like they had everything sort of together and I could really put my ideas and talents to work, really pushing growth, which is really the more fun part of being part of a user group.
Absolutely, and it's great to have a vendor that actually really wanted to have that independent user group. Again, they were contemplating how they were going to do it, and obviously I wasn't part of those discussions, but my engagement was really contingent upon the fact that it had to be independent. I don't want to just be a yes person for a vendor. I want to be able to have critical thought, be able to have real valuable discussions, and have the concerns again of the ecosystem where we can be working together and collaborating and networking with each other. And Fuel really, I saw it at the very beginning as having some great potential, and to be where we're at, just over 4 years later, very, very exciting stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just say that, to Palo Alto Network's credit as well, they've been really good about the independence thing. And I don't think they want Fuel to be yes men for them. As board members, we have access occasionally to the C-suite of Palo Alto Networks, and we get to meet with some of the C-level executives. And they really do look for our feedback, and they want us to give them honest feedback and criticism at times. And I really appreciate that as an independent user group, that they look to us for that kind of opinion, and they're not looking for us to just really take the Palo Alto Network's marketing message and send it to our users. That's what they have their own marketing team for, but they're looking to us to be the voice of the community and to give back to them so that they get the feedback that they want.
Absolutely, absolutely, agreed.
So you served as the board president, or you served as the board president for 2 years. What were some of your highlights from serving as the president? Anything big that comes to mind when you think back on your time?
So yeah, our founding president was Blake Wofford. He did a great job for the first 2 years leading the organization, and I jumped in after his tenure, and even with 2 years on the board and kind of helping grow something from the start, I knew what I was getting into, but you kind of just never know as you're taking on even more and more leadership. But in terms of some of the highlights, I think I'm going to have to just go big picture and look at the highlight really being is how quickly this community grew from a handful of passionate customers to over 30,000 members strong, and that's in 4 years. I mean, I'm a member of a number of different technology organizations, user groups, and those kinds of things, and this is the quickest growing group. The VMware group grew really, really quickly as well, but I think this one might even have them beat. And I think maybe even more exciting than that, because raw numbers can be deceiving. 30,000, that's a great number, but it's really the fact that we've got people, it's the engagement. We have people from almost every organization that's joining Fuel, but we've got every region, I think almost every country, maybe not Antarctica, but we've got just about every country and continent other than Antarctica covered. And we've got a lot of great engagement going on, both globally, but as importantly, at the local level. I know you mentioned some of the chapter events and those kinds of things. And when people get together at the local level and address local needs, and I don't mean industry, I mean, we got people locally from all industries coming. So it's really about the locale, the region, and some of the things that are more important there. And when you get people networking together, talking together, sharing lessons learned and best practices, oh yes, and having Palo Alto Networks and other vendors within the community at the table at these events, listening to the critique, the criticisms, the roadmap questions, the hey, how about adding this feature? We've been kind of having a problem with this. What are you guys doing to take a look at that? And having the ability to bring people together and have them engaged within this community, to me, that's really the most exciting thing, because that in the end is what's going to enable all customers, even the ones that have a fairly small IT security ecosystem, to have a voice into the community, into the vendor. And then we as an organization, as a user group, as an independent user group, can advocate on behalf of the largest company or on behalf of the smallest company. And so I really equate that to building an organization very, very rapidly, a user group that can now enable someone like me, who might be a IT security engineer at a very small firm, and I'm trying to deal with all these firewalls and other security things, trying to deal with my Palo Alto Network vendor, and I feel like I'm a minnow in an ocean. Well, now when I'm working with a user group and I've got the power of the user group and 30,000 members behind me that may have the exact same questions or the exact same concerns, I kind of turn from that minnow in a big ocean to a big fish in a little pond. So lots of exciting things occurred, and more things to happen. So, but Dwight, I know you're obviously just took over the reins as president at the last Ignite conference. What are you looking forward to most as you serve Fuel as president?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So actually, when I came on as the president, I was asked to kind of think about what I wanted my time as president to be. So as on the board of directors or as an officer, I'll have a 2-year term to be the president. So I've got 2 years to, I guess, have an agenda and really push as much as I can what I want that to be and what I want the vision for Fuel to be during that time, which is both a big opportunity and a big responsibility, honestly. So I decided that I really wanted to push the education aspect, and that education really means a lot to me. And I think that having Fuel be kind of a central place where technicians, really the people that are out there working on firewalls and anybody looking to advance their career, they could come to Fuel and find information for that, whether that's information about making your firewalls run better, best practices guides, and those kind of things, whether it's I want to advance my career and go from a junior engineer to a senior engineer, or from the engineering team to a management position, or wherever you want to go. If it's with Palo Alto Networks, I want people to think of Fuel as their first stop, that you don't have to go around and, pull in resources from a bunch of different places, that you could go to Fuel and get all the information you need. So I've really kind of pushed some of these initiatives that are going on that I really want to focus on, that are all about learning. So we've got an upcoming thing that we don't have a date for, but it's a PCNSE training course that will happen locally. The idea is that it would happen at the chapter level. So we would provide the courseware. Somebody at the chapter level who wants to study PCNSE would kind of set up a study group for your local chapter, and then people could join in there and just get some feedback. It can be difficult to study for a certification on your own, as I'm sure everybody, in the industry knows. And some people really need a push, somebody to keep them on track. You can get overwhelmed with things like studying for a certification. So to have that feedback from not just your peers, but your local peers that you might see at a meeting next month, or peers that you might run into, just out and about. So it's a really great program that I've been pushing. That was actually started by the Sacramento chapter. People there just decided that this would be a good idea, and they put together the courseware and they offered it to Fuel, which also is, a great formula for success from us. This isn't something that we pushed down from the top. This is something that just a regular user thought would be a good idea, put together, and then offered up to the community and said, hey, if you want to use this, you can kind of take this model, and now we're working with them to polish it up and make it something that we could give to other groups. But I think it's a wonderful opportunity there.
That is, yeah, it's so cool. Taking a grassroots engagement and then taking that and lifting it up to something that you can use globally. That's a great lesson learned within the Fuel community. That's wonderful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, I mean, honestly, that's what a user group really is. A user group isn't just going to a meeting once a month and seeing, or, once a quarter, depending on your meeting schedule, and hearing from the vendor, your vendor, about what's new. Like, that's great too. And, it's great to just go and network at those events. But this is really what a user group is. One small group has an idea, they build it out, and then they can disseminate it among the entire user group and make it good for the entire community. I mean, it's such a great success story. I absolutely love it. And it makes me excited for the future of Fuel and what comes next, whatever that might be.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, and your answers are, you and I have different positions within our organizations. My focus is different than your focus, and knowing that I can get what I'm looking for out of a user group and association like Fuel, where I can get the networking and the alignment into the vendor and an ability to have that access. And from your standpoint, I know that's all important too, but the education and the education, I've got, some folks that work for me that just, they steer towards that education, and whether it's at Ignite or one of the Spark events or one of the chapter events, they really long for that education. So I think that's great, understanding that, regardless of what your role is, whether you're a C-suite director, mid-level manager, security engineer, security tech, whatever your position is within that ecosystem, Fuel can play a role and add value across all of those IT security roles.
Yeah, absolutely. And my goal is to make it play more of a role. There's some education that's available now, and the really big push that I'm trying to go for is we need more. We need more opportunities for education. We need more ways for people to interact, whether it's online, whether it's in person. And I just want to push all of that. But I just wanted to key in on something you said there. I mean, this is a new thing for Fuel. Like, we've really come a long way, even in the time that I've been on the board. What are the things that you've seen change in Fuel since you first started, since you were there at its inception? What are the big changes you've seen in the organization?
Yeah, so I mean, technology just changes so much, and obviously organizationally, we have to change as well. And so I think when Fuel first started, I would say everything was really focused on our Palo Alto Networks relationship, and from a customer standpoint, my Palo Alto Networks investments. But over the last 4 years, kind of as we've been talking already, the community has built some great partnerships with other vendors in the ecosystem. Um, they, along with all the new members, have made Fuel really a vibrant, fast-growing community with, I think, the power really to shape the future of cybersecurity, because we have so many of the different vendor partners within the community already, and that continues to grow. And as I mentioned earlier, we've got so many small, medium, and large customers, whether they're businesses or government agencies or what have you, that are also involved. So, once what was a loosely knit set of customers that got together every once in a while, maybe at a conference or something, now with Fuel behind us, we're really a close-knit community crossing all geographies, all industries, all demographics. And we've got that strong, passionate voice into Palo Alto Networks, while providing a conduit for Palo Alto Networks to be able to disseminate accurate education and product information and future directions information and all that kind of stuff through a conduit that makes sure that they get information to our 30,000 members who are their customers, or in some cases, potentially their prospects as well. So I think that's the big key, and where we're heading. Over 4 years, we've made so many different changes. I think you're going to see continued changes at the event levels, at the chapter meeting levels, and at the educational content and services that we offer globally, on the web and otherwise. So we, like everyone else, have to stay engaged and have to be relevant, and we need to change as the landscape changes and as our primary and or other big vendors within the community change. So too we must as well, to make sure that we're providing value to our members. So I don't know if you have any other thoughts in terms of what your thoughts are going, in that direction as we move forward, or maybe the best way would be, what's your advice to Fuel members, who are looking to get engaged, and how can they, make the most of their experience with the community?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I'll just say, on the tail end of what you were saying there, Fuel has really changed a lot for sure. When I first joined in, it was really focused on local, forums, local chapter meetings, and if you were in the right area, a Spark event, which is the larger 1 day event that is kind of regional because of the amount of resources it takes to put them together. And I think it's changed a lot now where chapter meetings are much more widespread and in a lot of cases more frequent. And, there, of course, are more Spark events. We've also got these other, training events coming down the line. But also we have a lot more online webinar type things. So whereas before I felt it was mostly centered on the forum and then you'd kind of get a touch base monthly, quarterly, biannually, depending on your chapter meeting, it was mostly that. And now I feel like it's expanded so much more and there's just so many more opportunities to get involved, which I think dovetails with the question that you just asked me. That I know that it's a cliche to say, but really a user group is you get out of it what you put into it. It's not like a paid program where you put your money in and then that program is going to force feed you information and you're going to get value out of it in that way. It's free to join Fuel. You're a member of Fuel, and you're part of the community. You're what makes the community. So as a new user, if you want to get a lot out of Fuel, you just have to put a little bit into it. And that might mean, posting on the forums, whether it's questions or posting answers to questions that you see, you'll get a lot out of it by just becoming known in the community, showing up at the chapter meetings. It's great as a networking event and as an informational event, but also other things. So as I said, the Sacramento chapter kind of had this idea. Somebody there had the idea. They reached out to an SE at Palo Alto Networks and said, hey, want to take the PCNSE? What about a study group? And, that idea flourished from there. So it doesn't really take a lot. You, as a user, you probably have ideas. And, a lot of times you look around for ideas and you see people aren't doing these things. You've got a great idea. Nobody's doing it right now. And then maybe you let that go. Oh, nobody's doing that. So there's no way for me to get access to it. Okay, so I'll just move on. But with a user group, with a large community like this, if you've got an idea, centered around Palo Alto Networks, the firewalls, all these kind of things, or some way that it works in, you can reach out into the community and say, hey, I have an idea. I'd like to do this, or I think maybe, maybe I'm not the person for it. I don't have the resources for it, but it'd be great if we had this. And Fuel in both senses, both meaning the local group, the people around you that would attend your chapter meeting, and Fuel, the leadership and board, if this is a good idea, we're always looking for good ideas. We're always looking for what the next thing is that we can push out to users and help them. So, it's not just attending meetings and posting on the forums, although you'll get a lot of value that it's, putting your expertise and your mind out there as well. You have ideas, give them to us, share them with the community, and we'll see what we can do with them.
Yeah, there's so many great thought leaders that are part of our community. And as I've perused through the various content on the website, as well as attending chapter meetings, Spark events, and even Ignite, where we've got Fuel members presenting at Ignite, it's just wonderful to see all of that information, all of that thought leadership, all of that content, and being able to have other people that you can present to and share it with, and probably more importantly, learn from at all these different things. I just think there's such great value. So yeah, my thoughts are right in line with yours. I think that I'll say get involved, and once you're involved, stay engaged. And whatever level of engagement that may be, just continue to stay engaged, because you never know when something important is going to crop up, and you might be able to either share something or learn something that can really benefit you personally, your organization professionally, or the community at large.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And so, uh, John, I have a question for you. I'm not sure how long you've worked in the kind of IT or security industry, but throughout your career, what are some of the milestones you've experienced within the industry? Where do you see us going next? Because I think that's one of the things that Fuel tries to look at. You know, we've had a lot of conversations recently internally where we do surveys and look at where is the industry, where are Palo Alto Networks heading, and what do people want to see, so that we can kind of customize our content. So to that end, you know, what are some of those big things that you've seen come and go?
Yeah, so I almost hate to admit how long I've been doing this, but I've been doing this stuff for over 30 years, and that's technology, IT technology stuff, as well as security. I mean, I don't even know if you remember back to the first web browser, Mosaic. I think that was released back in 1993. That thing was going to just help us navigate this new thing called the World Wide Web. And, you know, who would have thought of all the great opportunities back in 1993 to today that the web and the internet really provide? But at the same time, just think of all of the challenges that this thing has created as well. You know, and with those challenges in a 2019 society, equating really to data hacks and ransomware and other security challenges, you know, that we face literally every second of every day. I think more recently we look at, you know, cloud and cloud adoption. You know, you could ask 5 people, what is the cloud? And you'll probably get 5 different answers. So, you know, but from a security standpoint, the cloud really introduces a lot of complexity, a lot of potential good things, but if you don't configure things and create contracts and negotiate contracts and those kinds of things appropriately, and dot your I's and cross your T's, and have the infrastructure in a place where it needs to be, the cloud can really be a very dangerous place. So, and if nothing else, even for those organizations that have great security footprints, the introduction of the various cloud opportunities, you know, introduces various nuances that haven't been there before. So, as more and more companies embrace some of these new technologies, and as we move into the cloud, as we change our overall architecture and support models, we really need to be cognizant of all of the different reliance that we have on our vendor partners. And anything that we do in IT security, any vendor that we have that plays any role in our security within our organization must be considered a mission critical vendor. And so those partnerships need to be built and continue. I think the other thing that I'm seeing in terms of where the industry is heading, regardless of what industry you are, but I know focusing on the security ramifications, is we're all going to have to do more and more retooling and re-educating our employees. Because as critical as the critical technologies change, so too must our employees. And I think that's one of the great things that Fuel has to offer is, you know, because we have all these thought leaders within our community, and we have access to the vendor partners who are, you know, changing the technology and implementing these changes. We have a community in place that can help build the educational path for our employees. We can leverage things that we're getting from our vendor community and that are being kind of bundled and delivered through Fuel mechanisms, and allow for using Fuel to help be that change agent, to help be a lot of that educational content for many of our people within the security ecosystem, Palo Alto Networks or otherwise. So I think it's really providing us great opportunities that as this industry changes, as it changes literally daily, working with Fuel and being able to build relationships and engagement within the community and build partnerships, and I'll say friendships, literally friendships within the community that we can leverage both personally and professionally. I just think it's a lot of exciting things to come in the next 30 years, just like the previous 30 years that we've seen. So, any thoughts or comments that you've had? I know you've been doing this for a long time as well.
Yeah, so I've probably been doing this, let's see, for almost 15 years now. So you definitely have me beat on experience wise here in this career field. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think cloud, which you pointed out, has been the biggest change in the last 5 years, definitely, maybe even the last 10 years for the time that it's kind of been building up and taking over. I still remember, even in my shorter career, I remember the change from kind of the basic firewalls being the de facto edge firewall, your kind of Cisco's and Junipers, those kind of things, giving way to the next gen firewalls like Palo Alto Networks and like others that can understand, the applications that are speaking that are more intelligent to combat threats and newer protocols when they were coming out. I remember that at my first IT job, which was really at the college where I went. The big thing then was BitTorrent coming out, becoming a huge problem for traffic shaping, for systems not being able to understand that, and that was a big deal. That BitTorrent would just, it was such a new protocol, and firewalls were not able to understand all the port changing, all and all this, really the details of the protocol, and you needed to get new hardware to be able to traffic shape and be able to control the flow of traffic on your network. So I remember that. I remember, so when I first started, there was a big push towards network security monitoring, which now has kind of fallen out of favor and is sort of starting to come back. So initially it was network security monitoring, monitor all of the traffic on your network. And then it was determined like, oh, well, that's so much traffic, you can't get value from it. So that's no good, get rid of that. And now it's kind of coming back a little bit with the inexpensive disk space that we have now and cloud storage. So now we're getting into this SIEM generation where, you're storing all these logs and you're able to index and search all of them and get real value out of them in that way. So yeah, even in my, career that's half the length of yours, things change so often. As you said, they change daily, they change yearly, like there's huge changes all the time. I think the big change that I see kind of happening now and that I see will be continuing to happen throughout the next 5 years, especially, is this push towards automation. I mean, everything's towards automation. We're told all the time that, we generate too many alerts. The staffs that we have are small. They can't possibly process all the alerts that we're seeing. And so we're getting pushed towards systems that will automate that for us, that will look at all the alerts for us, bubble up the most important ones and bring those in front of you so that you can react to real threats, real attacks, real problems on your network, whatever they happen to be. And, that's a big push, as well as various partners and vendors are pushing automation of even, more granular things. So that's alerting, but there's a big push towards, well, why are you even doing manual edits to your firewall? You can automate all of that. You can automate when it happens. You can automate your configurations for your firewalls and all of your network devices. So there's this big push towards, we should automate everything. Everything should be automated so that the people on the ground, the people on the front lines are really just seeing the most important things, which I think is a good trend with a lot of risks associated with it as well. There can be over automation where things are happening behind the scenes that you don't know what's happening. So changes are being made that either you're not aware of or you're not fully aware of the consequences of those changes being made. So, there's a way to do it right, and there's obviously ways that can go wrong for you. So I think, and just to chime in, yeah, you're absolutely right. Things are going to change massively, no matter what we say on this call that we see happening in the next 1, 5, 10 years. Things are going to accelerate, and things will happen that we absolutely couldn't have predicted, especially over the next 30 years. So yeah, it's a really exciting field. It's one of the things that I really like about the field. There's always changes. There's always something new. And sometimes that's, good in that, hey, it makes your job easier. And sometimes it's bad, like ransomware pops up. So that's a bad change that's come over the last few years, but it's always something new and always something different every day.
Yeah, I think my closing comments really would be focused on, as we look at what is happening within the industry, we really don't even need to look beyond Palo Alto Networks. Look at Palo Alto Networks over the last 2 to 3 years, where 2 or 3 years ago, they were all about firewalls, and securing the enterprise. Now, as we look at where we're at here in 2019, and as they're looking into the future, we're looking at securing the enterprise, securing the cloud with the Prisma, and securing the future. When you just talked about the intelligence and here, but securing the future with Cortex. So we have seen this innovative vendor who is driving disruption in the industry, making these changes over such a short time. And as they do that, Fuel must also do that, because our members, quite frankly, demand it. We need to be changing as quickly as the technology is changing. And so, my closing thought really is, and I think this is a great thing because I love to learn and I love to be educated, but never ending change equals never ending learning. So for me, that's really where Fuel can fit in, because the only constant here in this industry is going to be continuing change, and I am going to continue to rely on Fuel to provide me with a lot of that information related to my IT ecosystem in terms of staying on top of that change and maybe even in front of that change.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think just to add on to it, watching Palo Alto Networks is a sign of where the industry is going. They are a successful Silicon Valley company, so they are constantly keeping their finger on the pulse of where things are going. And I think just watching their acquisition strategy, as I do in the news the same way as everyone else, with no inside knowledge from Fuel in that respect. You see them picking up DevSecOps companies, automation companies, and their strategy as they shift, they're trying to keep up with the industry. So I think that's a pretty good bellwether. You can look at what they're doing and say, okay, it looks like the analysts think that's where the industry is going to go next. Automation, DevSecOps, push to the cloud, securing a remote workforce. All those things are seen as key indicators. So yeah, I completely agree.
All right. Well, I think we've wrapped up most of the topics that we're looking to address today. I think as we're looking towards the future on the Fuel horizon, we've got nothing but some exciting things around the corner. And as some of the things we can't even think about, and that's why we continue to make sure that we have leadership at various areas across the Fuel membership, whether it's leadership at the chapter level or to some of our discussions where we have the board leadership. So I know both from your perspective and my perspective, we want to make sure that this organization continues on into the future, and that's going to rely on folks like you who are listening in and who are either members of Fuel or who are thinking about becoming members of Fuel. I think it's such an exciting time. It's an exciting industry within the security realm. And there's just so much that we can really get out of our relationship with Fuel. And maybe the coolest thing is it's free. So at no cost, I have access to all this great education, all these various opportunities, and access into Palo Alto Networks and other vendors within our ecosystem. So I'm really excited, Dwight, and I am so appreciative of you asking me to join in and participate on this call, and look forward to continued engagement and participation with the Fuel community.
Absolutely, yeah, and thank you for taking time out of your day and joining the call. I just want to point out a couple quick things about Fuel coming up. So some big news from Fuel is that we had a presence at the Palo Alto Network Sales Kickoff and VMworld and Black Hat this year, which is great. We've got these new training days coming up. So definitely go on the website and check them out. They're one-day events like the Spark events, but they're really focused around education, as I mentioned earlier. So that's a big push of mine. We've got 50 chapter meetings planned over the next couple quarters here. So definitely go on the website, check it out. There may be one in your area, or your chapter may be meeting soon. And we also, we recently just hosted big Spark events in Sacramento and Chicago, and we have another one coming up in Boston by the end of the year. So if you're in the Boston area, definitely check that out. If you're still listening, thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, we'd encourage you to check out more on Fuel's website at fuelusergroup.org. That's fuelusergroup.org. We have blog posts, webinars, discussion forums, local chapter groups, and more. So many ways to get engaged with the community. And if you're not a member, we strongly encourage you to join us. Just visit fuelusergroup.org and click Why Join Fuel to learn more.